Thank you very much, and welcome to this evening. I just want to, before I begin my speech, which will be looking at what is the Australian story, I just want to pay my respects to the first people of this land. In fact, my own ancestry as well connects me to this place through my great-great-grandfather. So my respects to the Eora people of this land and any elders who are here tonight and all elders past and present. 40,000 years ago, on the shores of Lake Mungo, a man was buried. He was a giant of a man. The study of his bones shows he would have stood at least 6 feet 5 inches, nearly 2 metres tall. He was roughly 50 years old. He had been a warrior and a hunter. His body ached with arthritis. I can see it now, this man laid to rest, his body adorned with ochre. This was a ceremony. It remains among the oldest evidence of ritual burial anywhere on earth. Mungo Man speaks to us still. He connects us to an ancient story of our land. His forebears had set out for this continent thousands of years before. They were the first humans to cross an open sea. Their story is written on cave walls and carved in trees. It is carried in song and it is captured in painting. Their story lives in me. I am their descendant. This is an Australian story. It's a story still being told. It's the story of us, all of us, who have been blown here on the winds of fate. For some, it was an island prison. For so many of us, it has been a refuge. Whatever our origins, this is our home. For the writers among us, it's been our struggle to be at home here. Its beauty has captivated us. It's a harsh place that sometimes terrifies us. Dorothea McKellar told us of its sweeping plains, rugged mountain ranges, drought and flooding rain. And singer Archie Roach reminded us to be careful where we walk on this land because a child was born here. This year, I've returned to one of our great stories, Eleanor Dark's trilogy, The Timeless Land. Written in the 1940s, Dark explores the birth pains of modern Australia and the upheaval for the First Peoples. She imagines the moment of the coming of the whites. The boy, Bennelong, has come to the shore with his father. As she writes, he was conscious of the world and conscious of himself as part of it, fitting into it, belonging to it, drawing strength and joy and existence from it, like a bee in the frothing yellow opulence of the wattle. Dark imagines a blue cloudless sky, the sea a silver line, the surf breaking on the rocks below. Bennelong was tired, but his father did not notice. He kept his eyes peeled for the boat with wings. He'd been looking year after year for that strange morning when a magic boat had flown into the harbour. It had folded its wings like a seagull and come to rest. From the boat came mysterious beings with faces as pale as bones. Bennelong had been told this story in Corroboree, how these strangers came and left just as suddenly. It was long ago and the memory of the magic boat had faded, but Bennelong's father remembered. And so they came to stand on the rock and watch and wait for the white faces' eventual return. Bennelong's head filled with old stories, imagining, dreaming, and becoming. Bennelong stared at it, she wrote, the unending water. He looked up at his father's lean figure, still motionless, still watching for the boat with wings. And there was born in him a conviction which all through his boyhood was to tease him, that the water was not really unending after all, that somewhere far, far away there lay another land, that someday he, Bennelong, not in a bark canoe but in a boat with wings, would go in search of it. A generation later, another Australian writer, Thomas Keneally, in his book The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, imagines a scene long after the whites had come. Keneally's blacksmith emerges as a new type of being, a creation possible only here. The bone-pale face of the white stranger has darkened, and the curly hair of Dark's Bennelong has straightened. This is the Australian synthesis. Blacksmith born of black and white, from ancient and new. Australian in a way that no other can be. Keneally's blacksmith was based on the historical figure Jimmy Governor. The real Jimmy was a mixed-race Wiradjuri man who, like his fictional equivalent, married a white woman and searched for a place in this new country on the eve of federation. Governor found instead derision and rejection. His wife endured humiliation, and Jimmy, aided by his brother and an uncle, responded with a violent rampage that ended with 9 people dead and sparked what was then the biggest manhunt in Australian history. Keneally sees Jimmy as a man between, finding a place in neither the white world nor the black world. He is a potent symbol of a country in transition, what has been and what is to come. Jimmy is tied inexorably to this nation, its injustice, its brutality, its fate, even as he is mocked, excluded, doomed, and even as he so violently rejects it. In film and art and song and literature, we have sought to make sense of what it is to be this thing we call an Australian. I recall seeing the film Picnic at Hanging Rock, drawn from the novel by Joan Lindsay. I saw it on a very rare visit to the cinema as a young teenager. And the memory has never left me. Those vanishing girls seemingly swallowed by the land itself. I remember the voiceover of the doomed girl Miranda. What we see and what we seem, she said, are but a dream within a dream. The use of that word dream has always seemed to me to connect us to something much deeper, to the dreaming, the Indigenous genesis story of how we came to be in this land, and the disappearing girls entering into that part of the dreaming story itself. Picnic at Hanging Rock has always struck me as a film about Britishness set against the myth of terra nullius, that this was an empty land, free for the taking. Those who emerge from the disappearance of the girls are forever changed, a new people in a new place. The girls lost are now a part of this place, initiated, a mystery, now part of an even greater mystery of this old land. In Weir's film, the Indigenous presence is felt more than seen, the land itself represented as blackness. Eleanor Dark, Tom Keneally, Peter Weir, they are among our great storytellers who have tried to tell the story of us, of our place. They set us in an ancient continuum ruptured by a cataclysmic clash of culture and civilization. Out of destruction we are born anew, uncertain perhaps of our place, but with no other place to call our own. Whiteness must struggle with blackness. It is in the land itself. They join with a deep tradition too of Indigenous storytelling. We have our own struggle as Indigenous people to belong here when the very essence of our belonging itself has been ruptured and the certainty of our heritage blurred. Jimmy Governor, Jimmy Blacksmith, part white, married white yet rejected for being black. What it is to be Indigenous has become a puzzle not easily explained and not simple to comprehend. The young Indigenous writer Ellen Van Neerven, in her book of short stories, Heat and Light, a dazzling collection that crunches genre and gender, where plants speak as people and the past and future collide, grapples with ambiguity and the fluidity of identity and belonging. Van Neerven is of Aboriginal and Dutch heritage, and many of her stories are tales of this ambiguity. So much is in what we make of things, she writes. The stories we construct about our place in our families are essential to our lives. In one story of a girl looking for herself in the image of a grandmother she had never known, Van Neerven writes, "If I didn't know my grandmother, then how could I know myself?" The story of Australia speaks to us now from the barren, dry shores of Lake Mungo, where a man was laid to rest with full ceremony. It speaks to us in the story of Jimmy Governor, Jimmy Blacksmith, as he sat in a Darlinghurst jail cell, alternating between singing songs in his traditional Wiradjuri language and reading the Bible. a synthesis of old and new worlds that collided so violently, given form to a man bound for the gallows. It is a synthesis Keneally saw as the contradiction and yet the very essence of being an Australian. Joan Lindsay wrote the book of the missing girls of Hanging Rock, and director Peter Weir fixed it in our imaginations. The land itself, a potent character in an ethereal tale of place and being. These are Australian stories, ancient and modern, all efforts at recognition, a need to be seen. It's a fleeting project, an attempt to capture a people always changing in a time and place. A drawing on a cave wall preserved for antiquity to tell future people this was us. It is essential and it is so very human. Thank you.